Hello everyone, welcome to Computer Aid. Today we learn about Entity Relationship Diagram or ERD. What is it? How we draw ERD? So let's start. ERD is a pictorial representation which shows entities and or objects and relationship between these entities. So to draw ERD we have to know what is entity, what is attribute, and what is the relationship between these entities. So relationship. Or we can say relation. Suppose we logically represent a library system. Okay. Now we have to find what is entity. Entity means the distinguishable objects. So entity means distinguishable objects, or we can say distinguishable items. So what is the distinguishable item in library system? Suppose books, or we can say the reader who read the books. So this is the entity, and we represent the entity in a rectangle. Now we have to find what is attribute. Attribute means the properties of these entities. So attribute means properties of the entities. So what are the properties of the books entity? Its title, and we represent the attributes in ellipse. So title or book ID, identification number, book ID, title, then the author. Next is publisher. Or year of publication. This is another attribute, year of publication. Now the another entity is reader. Find the attributes of the reader. Reader ID, or you can say the card number or library card number. So we represent reader ID, then reader name, okay, address, then status. What is status? If we consider it as a college library system, so status means if reader is a teacher or a staff or a student. Okay. Now the most important thing, that is a relationship or a relation. What is a relation means? It represent or it define the association or mapping between these two entities. So relationship or relation means mapping between entities. Okay. Here the relation is reader can read books or borrow books. So relation, we represent the relation in diamond. So reader can read or borrow books. Okay. Now relation may have its own attribute. Suppose its attribute is date of issue, date of issue, and the relation have also attributes with the entity participated with this relation. Suppose we considered book is a table with attributes BID, title, author, publisher. etc. And reader is also a table with attributes reader ID, name, address, and status. So if borrow is also a table, it have attributes like BID, RID, and date of issue. That means which reader borrow or issue which book. This relation relate the book and reader in this way. Okay. So now we consider another example, that is a banking system. So at first we find the attributes and entity. So find the entity of banking system. What are the entities? Suppose customer, account, these are the entities. So we write customer is an entity and account is also an entity. Now what are the attributes of the customer? Customer ID, identification number, and customer ID is also key attribute in this customer entity. What is the key attribute? Key attribute means which uniquely identify the customer entity. That means primary key. And we draw a line in the text to define key attribute. Okay. Now the next attribute is customer name. Now name is further divided into first name, middle name, and last name. So name is a composite attribute. That means which attribute further divided into another attribute, that is called composite attribute. And CID, this is a simple attribute. That means it is not further divided to any attribute. Okay, so this is a composite attribute. So next, suppose it is address. Address is also a composite attribute. It divided into PIN, state, and country. Now next, suppose it is phone number. Now customer may have more than one phone number, obviously. So phone number is a multi-valued attribute, and we represent a multi-valued attribute in double ellipse. This is a multi-valued attribute. That means multiple valued can be associated with this attribute. Okay. Now the next is, suppose date of birth, and the next attribute is age. Age is an attribute that is calculated or derived from another attribute, that is date of birth. If we have date of birth, we can easily calculate the age. So this attribute, which is calculated or derived from another attribute, this is called derived attribute, and we draw it or represent it as dashed ellipse. Okay. Now the relation customer and account. Okay, at first we draw the account. What is the account entities attributes? So it is account number and it is a key entity. Then the amount and type. What is the type? That means account is current account or it is savings account. Okay. And finally, the most important thing is the relation between this customer and account. Okay. What is the relation between it? We can say a customer open an account. So open is a relationship. Customer open an account. Now we already say that the relation have also the the attributes. So suppose opening date, this is the attribute of this relation, opening date. Okay. Now this relation, what is the relation? Relation means association of the customer and account. Now this account or this open is a binary relation. That means open relation associated with two entities. So it is a binary relation. In this way, we can also say a recursive relation. For example, suppose consider a situation, a company have many employees. So employee is an entity. Now there may be manager is an employee, workers also employee. Okay, now there is a relation that worker reports to employee. Worker reports to manager. So reports is a relation between the employee, this entity with itself. So reports to worker reports to manager, and workers and manager both are the employee. Okay, so if an entity related with itself, it is called recursive relationship. So this is the recursive relationship. So we know there is two type of relation. One is binary relation, then the recursive relation. Now consider a new entity in this banking system. So the entity is branch. It have attributes like branch code and address. Now the relationship customer can open account in this branch. So it is a ternary relation. It relates three entities. A customer can open an account in this branch. Okay, so this is a ternary relationship. Now we can consider another attribute, that is, this is another entity, loan. Suppose customer can borrow loans. So customer can borrow loans. So loan is an entity, and customer can borrow loan. So borrow is a relationship. Okay, loan have an attribute like loan ID, identification number, and amount, how much money. Okay, now we consider another entity, that is installment. Suppose loan paid by different installment. So loan paid by installment. In this situation, suppose installment have attributes like installment ID, amount, and date. Here installment have these attributes, but installment number cannot the key attribute because it can't define which loan of which customer. So installment is called, this is called a partial key, not the primary key. And installment, this entity is called weak entity. We represent weak entity as double rectangle. Okay, because the entity which does not have sufficient attribute to form a primary key, that is called weak entity. And all the entities which are primary keys, okay, this is called strong entity. Now to find the primary key of installment number, we say that primary key of weak entity equal to primary key of the strong entity it associated with. That means loan ID plus the partial key of the weak entity, so installment ID. By using loan ID and installment ID, we can find or we can identify the attributes uniquely. Okay. So now we know all about ERD, the conceptual model of database. We also know about the entity, attributes and relationship. But ERD is not complete without the mapping cardinality, which we discuss in our next video. Thank you everyone.